Hi, this is Marco Pimentel. Welcome to the podcast, Someone Like You. In this first season, you'll discover founders, creators, entrepreneurs, and business owners who are passionate about creating business models with lasting, sustainable climate solutions.
We are guests on Earth. We just live here. And what can we do to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, each other, and also this planet that we're living on?
Plastic waste. In Canada, we throw away over 3 million tons of plastic waste every year. Only 9% is recycled, while the rest ends up in our landfills, waste-to-energy facilities, or, unfortunately, the environment. In the United States, they throw away nearly 42 million tons of plastic waste per year, which amounts to over 130 kilograms of waste per person. Worldwide, about 8.8 million tons of plastic waste enters our marine environment. This is basically the equivalent of dumping a garbage truck filled with plastic into the ocean every single minute. If current trends continue, scientists have estimated this total could leap to 53 million tons. And that's by 2030, which, for context, is roughly half of the weight of all fish caught in the oceans globally each year. And what's intriguing? We have solutions. It should be fairly easy to switch off these plastics. But it takes a certain brand or company to lead in that direction. And that brings me to this week's episode. Joining me is Jackie Prince, co-founder of Guests on Earth, a brand of eco-friendly home care products that aims to restore balance between people and the planet. Jackie is an established marketing professional with over 15 plus years of experience as a creative strategist for brands like TikTok, Facebook, Neutrogena, L'Oreal, and more. Like many of us at the beginning of the pandemic, Jackie found herself cleaning her home more frequently. Cleaning felt a bit like a chore, and although the result was rewarding, the process was anything but, not to mention toxic. This inspired Jackie and co-founder Liz Drayton to design a brand of home care products that would elevate daily cleaning as an enjoyable sensory experience, blending intentional design with sustainability, and offering biodegradable, plant and mineral-based concentrated cleaning formulas and hand soaps presented in refillable aluminum containers. Here is our conversation. Jackie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marco, so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I was introed to you, and I'm excited to understand how this business has kind of came to light and the marketing and the branding side, because my understanding is you have a bit of a history with branding and marketing. You've worked as a creative strategist for TikTok and Facebook in the past, and yourself and your co-founder, Liz Drayton, came up with the concept during the pandemic. So just want to kind of start there. You know, you have a pretty incredible marketing background, and how did you come up with this idea, and where did this all begin?
Yeah, so, working from home during the pandemic, it became impossible to ignore just the constant pileup of both garbage and recycling that would accumulate each week. I have two small kids. We just go through a lot of stuff. And I was chatting to Liz about this as well, and she noticed the exact same thing. And I got curious and started doing some research into this space, because a lot of what I was seeing in my recycling bin were home care products like laundry jugs and cleaning bottles and things like that. And I pretty quickly learned that only 9% of plastic is properly recycled, and that the vast majority accumulates in landfills or ends up in the natural environment as litter and microplastics. And actually, a new study very recently came out from Beyond Plastics in the last beach cleanup that showed that 9% number is actually closer to 5 to 6%. And so I just continued to look into the home care space, and you'll notice the next time you walk down any cleaning aisle of any store that it's mainly a sea of plastic. This category looks essentially the same way it did 40 years ago. Everything is in these clunky, ugly plastic bottles and smells either overly chemical or excessively, fruity. And it's just not an enjoyable experience. So after trialing over 20 or so natural and eco-friendly products, we realized that there was really an opportunity to approach this category in a more modern, sustainable, enjoyable way. My background, as you mentioned, is creative strategy. So I've done a lot of brand positioning and marketing and campaigns, and I've also worked in social impact and more recently tech. And I just love the idea of kind of creating something that I felt really good about and really believed in, and really had like a personal interest in wanting to create a brand in this space that could be a force for good. And my partner Liz's background, she's an MBA, she's a chartered accountant, she's worked at Google, and she's been working the past few years in Toronto helping startups scale. And she also kind of felt really strongly about this. And so it was just it felt like the right time to go for it.
And was it the fact that there wasn't a brand that was going against these older brands, this sea of plastic, that was, the draw? Or was it, I guess, a combination of just the market, the fact that there is a better way, but the better way just hasn't surfaced because the old way was working and making these huge companies a lot of money?
Yeah, so no, it's been really exciting the past few years because there are some brands that have been starting to break into this space and really showing the customer interest in a more sustainable home care solutions. So Blueland is probably the biggest one. They're based in the States. They were on Shark Tank. They're well funded, and they kind of really made this tablet format more popular, and done a lot of education around diluting something to become a full-size product. And there's a few other brands kind of in that space, but it's really an emerging space. And when we looked at it, we felt like there was this kind of white space opportunity at the intersection of, yes, sustainability, but also design and self-care. Because a lot of these other brands either kind of still look, quite basic. There's a lot of minimalism or a lot of things that look similar, using just kind of clear or amber glass bottles, which are beautiful. But we didn't see anyone kind of coming in here and doing something different and treating it like more of a self-care, like personal care type of experience. And that also ties in with the self-care element from like a fragrance standpoint and just a product experience standpoint, textures and kind of the more elevated product experience wasn't one that we were seeing among brands that were already in the sustainability space. And from a consumer standpoint, I think when people, think eco-friendly or sustainability, there's still a lot of perception that it's, kind of crunchy. And that something might be eco-friendly or sustainable, but that it looks a certain way. And so, while there are a few products emerging in this space, we felt that there was an opportunity for us to do something really different.
Yeah, there's quite a few guests that we've had have been focusing on the consumer really doesn't see any difference. And when you see some of the kind of more eco-friendly brands in the past, it's usually a leaf is on there. It's probably some sort of brown packaging. It's really trying to define itself. But I think moving forward and what you're starting to see is there's no really the experience should be as good, if not better. And then the background, everything that's happening there is a sustainability focus, and the same as obviously all the packaging and everything too. But it seems like that's where it's moving towards, where a consumer gets a better or just as good of a product or a brand experience, and it also happens to be focused around, this is sustainability at its core. So
exactly.
Just to kind of go back to what your products are, it would be great just to kind of, what products do you carry, and what is your focus on kind of the product categories, and really what do you sell for the audience to understand that?
So we launched this past March 2022 with an all-purpose cleaner and a foaming hand soap and microfiber waffle cloths, which are made from 80% recycled materials, and the microfiber can be used hundreds of times. So with the all-purpose cleaner and the foaming hand soap, each of them, they both come in our small format refills. So we have these highly concentrated 50 milliliter and 60 milliliter refills that, you add with water and that becomes the full size product. And each of the all-purpose cleaner and the foaming hand soap comes in our 2 signature fragrances as well.
And when we think about the products comparatively, the idea really is that a concentrate allows you to have a reusable container. You purchase these refillables, but is it the packaging that's like, obviously with the concentrate must be vastly different in size for reducing shipping. I'm assuming reducing what if you can kind of get a little bit into those details.
So we approach from a sustainability product standpoint. We approach it in terms of reduce, reuse, and recycle. So it's all about reducing the amount of materials used and keeping products in circulation longer. So from a reduction standpoint, the small format refills, 90% approximately of all of these cleaning products are water. And so, there's just unnecessary weight and excess packaging of water that's being constantly shipped around when you're buying traditional cleaning products. So, us, like some of these other brands like Blueland, are why would we ship you water when you can use the water that you have at home? And so at a fraction of, the size and weight, we have these small aluminum refill vials that you mix with water at home. Room temperature tap water is great. And that dilutes into the full size product. So that means rather than having to buy a new full-size bottle of anything, you just buy, like you said, the bottles once, we call them vessels, once, and then the model is a refill model. So, it's one tiny aluminum vial that's fully recyclable, because aluminum is one of the most recyclable materials, which is why we chose it. One of the reasons why we chose it. And so that's less water shipped and less packaging waste.
And for the Procter & Gamble, the Unilevers of the world, was it simply because they wanted it was all focused in, if you said it's like a 40-year industry or a 50-year-old industry, did they just add water because it was convenience? You just open it up and you put it in?
I think that was, a big part of it. And that's just how it's always been done. We have found that people, the mixing of the product, one, it's super easy because you're literally just, you're filling water into something and then pouring in a little vial. And people actually like it. We have customers that tell us they do it with their kids. That's another thing, our ingredients, and we can talk more about ingredients, but it's safe. We formulated everything to be safe for people, the planet, including things in your home, like your pets. And so mixing the product is, really, it's not a big deal at all. And you're starting to see more of these bigger companies doing that. I think it's amazing, as customer behavior changes and customers signal these larger companies toward a certain behavior, hey, we want more sustainable products. These are, refills is really, I think, the future of where this category is going. And so, you see brands like Clorox now offering, little refills. And yes, they're packaged in layers of plastic. And yes, they still smell like chemicals, but it's an amazing sign that it is becoming more of a, a widely understood and accepted behavior. So, from a reduction standpoint, that's a big piece. And then, of course, the reusability standpoint, we're also looking to pilot a send back program for our vials so that, when people are finished, if they want to collect them, we'll send them a little bag like Nespresso does almost, where we can kind of wash and refill the vials and keep them in circulation longer. But again, we chose aluminum for both our larger vessels and our vials because aluminum is infinitely recyclable. It doesn't degrade over time. It maintains its value. But more importantly, around 75% of aluminum has been properly recycled in the States, versus 5% of plastic. So, that's another key piece for us.
So when we think about the industry, maybe asking just how big is that industry, and why is this such a big problem? And, is there any data points or stats around, how much is being shipped? If you go into any Walmart or any grocery store, like you said, it's just, and I used to, as a teenager, I worked at a grocery store. So I remember these skids and skids. When I was thinking about this conversation, I was like, I remember these massive skids of just detergents and cleaning supplies, heavy, 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 just being shipped around. So, how big of a problem is this, and how big is this industry, and impactful in what's happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's the North American home care market size is approximately, from our research, around like a $26 billion market. These are products that everyone uses on a daily basis, 365, all of the time. There are 400 million tons of plastic produced globally, on a yearly basis. I don't have the data on how that breaks out into our category. But for example, 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute. We know that around half of all of the plastic produced is designed to be single use. And so, all you have to do is kind of look under your sink or look at this aisle in any kind of store that you might walk down. And it's just so apparent how much really everything we buy is packaged in plastic. And, the more that we've been looking into this and looking for, new types of packaging for future kinds of products that we're working on, and even ways to optimize, everything that we're doing. It literally, it's really surprising, and it kind of continues to kind of drive our mission around how not only in our category, but even like the foods category and like just all of this packaging, even if it's, natural foods or foods that are, healthy and otherwise good for people, the vast majority of packaging is in some kind of plastic or something coated in plastic.
Yeah, and then all the effort around, like you said, the recycling numbers for plastic are quite bad. Not just quite bad, like you said. I think it's 9%, but there's studies that you're saying almost 5 or 6%. So it's quite. I have two kids as well, so I am in the same scenario. We recycle everything, and you just put it to the curbside, and you're like, yay! 95% of this is probably going to be gone. We got to figure out ways to make sure that we have less to recycle. Is kind of the idea, and the way that I can see it kind of forward. So maybe to understand a little bit more about your products and what goes into those products. I think a big part of it too is older, companies and products, like you said, smell really chemical focused. They put things in there to make you feel like things are really, really clean because of what we have. Can you just talk about what typically goes in the industry and what goes into your products, and how do you make them, and the natural aspect of that?
Yeah. So, within the category, and I think a lot of people bought these types of products, especially during the pandemic, there's like these, antibacterial, bacteria killing type of, cleaners. A lot of people use, bleaches to clean, and a lot of traditional cleaning products have things like ammonias or bleaches. Fragrances can have, synthetics and phthalates and just a lot of chemicals that are not safe for people or the planet. So, a lot of these products, again, like will come with VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds, and ammonias and bleaches and phthalates and sulfates and things like that. A lot of those ingredients can cause, irritation, skin irritation, allergy flare-up, asthma, things like that. And then, they also, when they go down our drains, they enter our waterways and our soil and kind of the atmosphere. They're not like natural ingredients that are safe. And I think just a good kind of daily anecdotal example is, you'll notice if you're spraying, your counter with a, Lysol that's killing bacteria, and then you're like putting an apple down on your counter and cutting it up to serve to your kids, you're probably going to want to wash it afterwards, or, not feel great about kind of having someone in your family put that in their mouth. And it's not, I think people and our customers also will still buy those products too for certain surfaces or, toilets and things like that they want to clean. But they can be used in combination with natural products or in replacement with natural products, cleaning products, because you don't need to necessarily kill bacteria on your daily counters. You can clean it and wipe it away and wipe away dirt and grime. So when we were developing our formulations, we really wanted to create a product that was people and planet safe. So we followed Made Safe guidelines. We reformulated a few different, times. We found out that one of the essential oils that we were using in one of our fragrances was bad for certain types of aquatic life, for example. And so we had that with a few different ingredients that we replaced. And we also list the EWG, or Environmental Working Group scores, in the ingredient glossary section of our website. So our ingredients are all plant and mineral based, biodegradable, vegan, none of the kind of toxic chemicals that I just mentioned, like the GMOs or the sulfates, phthalates, parabens, nothing bad or harmful. And we also use essential oil blends for our fragrances, so we have nothing synthetic in them. And those are all natural, derived from plants and flowers. And another thing that was important to me in doing this was that these are products that I could feel good knowing, like if my kids were using them, that's great,
Incredibly important in such an easy measure of, is this good for the house? Every week on Someone Like You, we dive into stimulating conversations with founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and the likes who are consciously and successfully creating sustainable business solutions for the long haul. Tune in every week for a new inspiring conversation on leading climate solutions. And if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget, please subscribe on the platform of your choice and give us a rating and a review. So you see these recycling bins, they're overflowing. You chat with Liz, you have this idea, and you say, let's look into this, let's build this brand. So how did you get started, and how did you start to create these products? So first, where do you make these products? How did you, come up with these formulations and kind of get to market with something? And, how did you get that early development of building out these products and this brand?
Yeah, great question. So I knew what I wanted, or we knew what we wanted in terms of having this small format type of refill, and wanted a liquid concentrate. And I literally just cold called. I just started calling people. I cold called over 50 manufacturers in North America. But first I put up a website, because what I had heard was, and what was true, is that a lot of these manufacturers, they work with huge companies. They have big contracts, and in order to be taken seriously, I needed to, you needed to kind of do a little fake it till you make it. So, put a very kind of initial, landing page up about, the brand idea, and then just started having phone calls, and actually identified 2 that were local to me. The only 2 that said that they could help me out of over 50. Were local to me. So we did some research and development with both of them, and then ultimately went with one who is, a half an hour drive from where I live, which is incredible, and have developed a really nice relationship with them over the past year and a half. So that started in, the idea was kind of started in January of 2021, started making these phone calls in February. Started thinking about the brand and the brand name really early. So that was even in January. And then I found an amazing designer through my advertising network. And he worked with us on our brand identity. And we did all these different iterations to kind of see from a visual identity standpoint, like, what does this brand look like? What feelings should it evoke? Developing kind of package design and brand concepts. And then started looking into the actual, all of the materials, and started corresponding with suppliers there's, multiple components to our products, because you have obviously the larger bottles, but then also the smaller vials. And then we sell those vials in retail packs. So they come in packs of 2. So we needed to find retail boxes, for those, and shipping boxes, and, belly bands to go around the bottles and the vials to sell in retail to make little kits. There's so many components that were new to myself and to Liz, like from a logistics standpoint. I could go on and on, so stop me. But that was kind of the very original. It was like having this idea. The brand name came really quickly, actually.
How did you come up with the brand name? It's quite awesome. So I'm curious.
Thank you. I've worked on a number of branding projects and naming projects throughout my career, and naming is really hard. This just, there was this Conservation International campaign that ran, just under 10 years ago now. And I was working, I think it was when I was working in the social impact space. And it was called Nature is Speaking, I believe. And it featured different celebrities like Julia Roberts and Reese Witherspoon narrating on behalf of different parts of nature. So it was like, I'm Mother Nature, I'm the ocean, I'm the lake. And essentially the message was like, I was here long before you and I will be here long after you. I don't need you. You need me, was kind of the message. Like, humans, it's up to you how long you're here. How are we going to coexist together? And, I think just the notion of we are guests on Earth. We just live here. And, what can we do to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, each other, and also this planet that we're living on? And so that is where the idea for the name came from. And we made we had a list of 30 or so names, and we just kept coming back to this.
And so name, you have, the great brand name, you've been building it out, you get a manufacturer close to you, working on these details, and you hit the market. What gave you early traction from like a marketing and, how did you get your first customers, and how did that all go in the beginning? Was it immediate adoption? Has it been difficult to get that marketing traction, and how has been the response from the customers?
So, because of my background, I worked at Meta, I worked at, in Creative Shop for a while at Instagram, and actually I was contracting for TikTok while developing this brand. The whole time. So, building community and social presence has always been something that is important from a brand standpoint. And I think really for a brand like Guests on Earth, which speaks itself to a community of people who would identify, around similar values. And so I started the Instagram feed a year ago, so 6 months before we launched, and just started slowly kind of building that out. The first thing we did pre-launch was we ran a lead generation campaign on Instagram and Facebook, where we were giving away, a few kits to collect email addresses, just to kind of start getting the brand name out there. And that, that did pretty well. We got some email addresses. It actually was great for organic growth. So that's something that I kind of tell other early founders that I've been speaking to. And then surprisingly, what did really well for us early on was a few PR hits. So, we pitched the press ourselves because we're lean and mean, Marco. We don't have big budgets right now. We've been self-funded. We're still currently self-funded, and so it's been very kind of scrappy, and us really going hard at it and hustling. But we did, pitch a lot of press and have been absolutely thrilled with the pickup. We weren't sure that we would get any pickup, and just the interest in the brand and the story. I think we're lucky in that we've created a product and a brand that people want and are ready for, and are kind of approaching it in a different way. We have people who gift our products, which is something that we hoped would happen. because it's like something cool that they found that, is different and kind of like an interesting thing to bring over to someone's house, which you would never see with like a traditional cleaning product. Like no one's going to come over and bring you like some Clorox as like for hosting them for dinner. So I'd say, having a, the right, a good product, a different kind of way of approaching it, at a time where customers are increasingly aware of the plastics problem and kind of wanting other solutions. Press pickup, working with other like sustainably minded brands in our space. We do giveaways on our social accounts sometimes. But it's really been a lot of hustling, Marco, like, getting into retail, getting in front of people. So pitching retailers that we feel align with, our values in most cases, and like have an audience who are primed for our type of product has been great, because that's been getting us in front of more people. They're physically seeing the product. I have found that when people can like see and experience the product, there's just this moment that happens, especially when they smell the fragrance. That's like this unlock. So we've been doing events at some of our retailers.
Is that the strategy moving forward? So like what would be your mix right now between, I'm assuming you sell it, I know you sell it direct to consumer on your website, but retail versus direct to consumer, obviously you want both of those probably channels to grow, but is there a focus right now? Is it a 50-50 mix of sales right now for you?
You could say if you average it out over the past, 5 or so months, it's been around, it'll average out to a mix of 50-50. I think ultimately, it would be nice to have a higher percentage of direct to consumer, just from a, margin standpoint. But, as you know, and I'm sure a lot of other people you've spoken with and will speak with, will say it's very difficult to be a DTC only business right now, especially when you don't have huge marketing budgets where you can just get in front of people everywhere all the time. And so for us, retail is a very important channel. And, we're so happy to be in the retailers that we are in right now. Like we're in Summerhill Market, Coco Market, Health Hut, Harvest Wagon. We're going to be in Village Juicery, Well.ca. We'll be there soon. Woody & Co., Bather. There's just a lot of great retailers that we've been in. And then I guess another thing I'll say to answer your original question of like the marketing part and what's been working, we've also had a really nice reception from like creators and influencers who have been interested to try the product. And then, in some cases have posted these like really extensive, wonderful reviews, which has been great.
And you're self-funded, like you said, but when, you look at direct to consumer, there's, it costs a lot of money to get in front of people, if it's marketing, if it's PR, whatever it is, it also, it just takes time and money to do that. And the same thing for retail. And because you're going after a market with, competitors in that sea of plastic at grocery stores that have billions of dollars in revenue and sales, how do you compete? Is it a plan around scaling and getting venture funding or debt to do so once you kind of get established? And I guess what are you thinking about that from a competitive standpoint?
So we will raise a little bit of money soon. And then I don't think we'll look into VC for another year or so. I think we're looking for, if there's any friendly angels listening, I think, a few angels and some friends and family, sooner, I think in the next few months actually, to help us again, with our marketing. We have some products in development, and there's, content, photography, film, things like that. And in terms of, getting out there and getting in front of people, it's an interesting space because we are hoping to steal a share from some of the more like traditionally like more natural, eco-friendly seeming products that, that are all still packaged in plastic. And some have made moves into other, materials or formats, but, the vast majority of the portfolio is still plastic. So brands like a Mrs. Meyer's and a Method, and a Sapodilla, I think are in our space. But we are kind of the product experience itself is a bit more elevated than I think those traditional grocery store brands. And so, I even hope to capture, some share from, I don't think anything like this really exists in a mass standpoint from a cleaner standpoint, but in like the soap standpoint, for example, things like, Aesop and some of these other soap brands. I think our soap stands up to a lot of those and is beautiful, and feels very luxe, and to them is a fraction of that price. So I think it's just continuing to get in front of people and how people experience the products themselves, and then also for us to continue to expand, what we can offer. So we have an amazing glass cleaner that should come out hopefully early next year. And we are in R&D on a dish soap that similarly dilutes. I think it was same with the glass cleaner, but the dish soap is something quite different that we're really excited about as well.
What I love about brands like Guests on Earth that you're doing is it's a focus from the beginning on how to look at this problem, and you have your all natural ingredients. You have reduction in massive shipping costs and weight because of shipping huge amounts of these bottles that are large because they're not thinking about concentrates. And then you think about all the plastics as well. And so my hope is what I see with companies like yourself is that it's just a new way to do that. And I'm assuming that you grow and you probably, I'm thinking you probably hope that the bigger companies of the world at some point too look at this and say either, maybe they'll acquire a Guests on Earth and start to implement this strategy, because it would be great to see these larger companies start to see companies like Guests on Earth and say, we should start doing this, and consumers doing it. This should just be the new way. This just makes more sense to do that. So I do love the whole kind of, idea and what you're bringing to the market in terms of not only your brand, but also the pressure that it puts in the entire industry. So I did want to just ask one last question. I'm a big fan of the book The Lorax. It's one that I read often, maybe too often to my boys. But at the end of the book, there's a simple story of the seed kind of goes into the hand of a child, and it's this message that this simple seed and a child can make a difference. And people often, especially when it comes to climate, when it comes to sustainability, they feel just. I hear this all the time talking to people. They feel overwhelmed. They can't do anything. What can we do? I'm just one individual, or I'm just one business. But individuals are the people that are making changes. So what do you think people or businesses can do as a first step towards change for our climate?
I think on an individual level, the daily choices that we make are really a lot more powerful than people may think, because you're right. And that's one of the big challenges, with climate change and with kind of consumer marketing around a lot of those initiatives is this feeling of kind of helplessness. But the daily choices that people make are actually a lot more powerful than we may think. So the more the market sees, signals one way, right? The more companies are seeing customer behavior change and adapt, the more companies will adapt. So I mentioned earlier, seeing bigger traditional brands starting to offer smaller formats, like that Clorox example I mentioned. And even though it's still in plastic and ugly and chemically, that's a positive signal. Clorox would not have started to do that if individuals hadn't been starting to make more of those conscious choices. So I think when it comes down to being a good guest on Earth, it's considering a bit more about the types of products that we consume on a daily basis and being open to alternatives. So, I would encourage people also to look at their, recycling bins and look at their garbage bins and seeing like what types of products are consistently winding up there and how can I reduce that. What materials is it made from? Is it single use or is it multi-use? What types of ingredients am I sending into my home and into the atmosphere and into the water systems? So I think on an individual level, just being more conscious and aware of the products that we're consuming on a daily basis is an amazing place to start. And from a business standpoint, it's looking at, the entire product life cycle and how what you're creating is actually, how that is actually impacting people and the planet, and what kind of an impact do you want to leave behind. And I think a lot of businesses have started to, we're going to be carbon neutral by the end of our first year of operations. We're undergoing a carbon assessment so that we can really understand as a business, like, what are we putting out there? And certainly will offset those emissions. But I think, and a lot of companies are doing that, but I think it has to be more than that, more than just kind of throwing money at it to offset, but really, really looking at your entire scope of business and what you're doing from a sourcing standpoint, manufacturing, transport, life cycle, end of life cycle of the products. Like, what does that look like, and how can you reduce the negative impacts that you're having?
Well, thank you, Jackie. This has been a great conversation, and I love what you're doing at Guests on Earth, the name and the brand and the mission, and what you're building, you and your team, and Liz. It's fascinating. I'm excited to follow your story. So thanks again very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Marco.
This podcast is co-produced with The Brand is Female. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Someone Like You. And if you did, please share this. We're a new podcast, and I would love it if you could share it with a family member, friend, colleague, work colleague. Share it on Slack, whoever you do. Just share and spread the message of these incredible brands. Please also support these type of companies. They're doing the hard thing, and the hard thing often takes a lot of people to get on board. And don't forget, please subscribe on the platform of your choice and give us a rating and review. I'm Marco Pimentel. Thank you for joining us today. For more information on Someone Like You, you can find us on Instagram at Someone Like You Podcast, with all the links to the podcast, our website, and more information about the brands that we feature. Thank you again.